those that may watch on YouTube. Welcome everybody watching on YouTube and Zoom to the class that shall not be named. We have an awesome group here today.
All three
Probably
of
the
them?
best group ever, probably the best three. Like out of all the people, all the three people, all the other people who usually come, you guys are the three best.
Of course.
It's like we're the Holy Trinity.
That's right. That's exactly what you are. The Trinity of wisdom. And so what we're going to do today is, last week we didn't have anything that people wanted to study, so I thought we would do a little bit of texts, some of the more famous texts from the first from Ethics of Our Fathers, Pirkei Avot, and also my favorite text, which we use often, and this I use and sometimes in conversion as well, and that is the Tanor Shel Achnai. So I'm going to put that on here because it is a really terrific piece of tradition that says a lot about Judaism and how we look at the world. And it is a very strange text. That's why we probably like it. So we'll look at this, look at a couple Pirkei Avot, and then maybe a couple other texts from other places that I like. So this is the Tanor Shel Achnai. That's the oven of Achnai. And it is a very esoteric, strange passage that comes out of left field. So I'll invite Lou, since you're there, if you want to read the beginning. It's a little hard to read because of the way it's written in Talmudic, but anytime you see a B, it means bar or ben, son of, and an R means rabbi or Rav. Rav is a rabbi in Persia, and the rabbi if you were living in Israel.
I'll give it a try.
All right, you're going to do great.
Oh, sure. Rabbi Johanan said, on the authority of Rabbi Simeon ben Yohai.
That's perfect.
Okay. Verbal wrong is more heinous than monetary wrong because of the first it is written, and you shall fear your God, but not of the second. Rabbi Eliezer said, the one affects the victim's person. The other only his money. Okay. Rabbi Samuel ben Nahami said, for the former, restoration is possible, but not for the latter.
Okay, and this is a really important piece of a basis of Jewish belief, that verbal wrong, which is insults or gossip, is worse than a monetary wrong. And this is a long discussed piece of Jewish text, because we think of theft as being terrible, and speaking ill of someone as not being as bad. However, Judaism looks at the opposite. If I speak bad of somebody, it is worse than stealing money from them. Why? For many reasons. One, money can be replaced. A bad reputation cannot. If I say a rumor about somebody, there's no way for me to take it back. It's even tenfold today, because today obviously we have
The internet.
Yeah, so I can speak ill of somebody, and my friends who are in Australia will hear about it in a split second later after I write it, and everybody will hear about it. Even if it's not true, I can put something up saying this was not true, but already the rumor has been spread, and it won't matter, people will believe it. So it's the story of everybody know the story about the pillow, the rabbi and the pillow?
Oh, it's not the story with the girl who got leprosy or something?
No, that's another good one. This is the one where somebody's been spreading rumors, goes to the rabbi, how can I make amends? The rabbi says, bring me a feather pillow. They go up to a mountain. The rabbi says, rip apart the feather pillow. Rips apart the feather pillow. The feathers fall over the mountain. And now the rabbi says, now go pick up all the feathers. And the little girl says, well, I can't pick up all the feathers. They're everywhere, and the wind's getting them, and they're in the mountain. It's impossible to pick up all the feathers. And the rabbi says, that's the point. It's the same with gossip. Once it gets out there, there's no way to pick it up. So this is a really sharp, specific piece of Talmud. Would you read the next part as well, Lou? And a Tana is just a rabbi from the 1st and 2nd century, basically.
Tana. A Tana recited before Rabbi Nachman ben Isaac, "He who publicly shames his neighbor is as though he shed blood." Whereupon he remarked to him, "You say well, because I have seen it, such shaming, the ruddiness
Mhm.
departing and paleness supervening."
It's basically publicly shaming somebody is like injuring them physically, because you see the face go white, the skin get pale. But shaming somebody, some would say, is just as bad as murdering somebody, because you're destroying somebody's reputation. So this is a very succinct piece of Talmud. If you look at the top, it's from Masechet Bava Metzia, which is a section of the Talmud called maybe the Middle Gate. In the Talmud, they count pages 1A, 1B. So instead of 1, 2, the second side is B. So 1A, 1B, 2A, 2B. So you'll see that this is 58B, and then we're going to 59A, where all of a sudden we're in this really succinct, powerful discussion on the ills of gossip. And we read this: "We learnt elsewhere." Does everybody see that? And we go in a totally, completely, utterly different direction that has nothing to do with what we just talked about, which happens sometimes in the Talmud. But you go for something very specific, very easy to understand, very much something that deals with the day-to-day of life. And now we're going to something completely different. And it's a really story. And all of a sudden they start talking about an oven. Is this oven kosher? So I'll invite Lou, and I'll stop you along the way. Or if you start if he cut.
Okay. If he cut it into separate tiles, placing sand between each tile, Rabbi Eliezer declared it clean, and the sages declared it unclean. And this was the oven
Of Aknai, which to this day nobody knows what it means.
Is that Rabbi? Rabbi
Not
Ju-
like Akanag? No, it wouldn't be Akanag.
I pronounce it Aknai in Hebrew,
That's how good my Hebrew
but
is.
it could be pronounced differently. I mean, who knows? The pronunciation may have changed and we don't realize it.
So, is that Rabbi? Said
No, it says,
Rab Judah?
yeah, it's Rab Judah. Should
In
be
Samuel-
Rob Judah. Yeah, it should be Rob.
Rob Judah. In Samuel's name, it means that they encompassed it with arguments as a snake and proved it unclean.
Okay, and we'll stop there. So they're talking about gossip, publicly shaming, the true measure of horror from this terrible, terrible issue. And then all of a sudden they start talking about an oven. Is this oven kosher? And it's very simple. One person said, Rabbi Eliezer, who's a very prominent rabbi, said it is kosher. And all the rest of the sages say it is not kosher. Has something to do with the sand in between the tiles. They say the sand in between the tiles means it's not kosher. You can't use this oven. Rabbi Eliezer says you can use it. So it's a very nothing argument, nothing compared to gossip, but yet it'll become one of the most important theological bases in Judaism. So now we've got Rabbi Eliezer on one side and all of the sages on the other. And Rabbi Eliezer thinks he is right. So if you'll read the next section, where it says, on that day.
On that day, Rabbi Eliezer brought forward every imaginable argument, but they did not accept them.
Okay, so he says, brings forth every argument possible, and they turn them all down. All right, here's the first, then he does something strange.
If he said to them, said he
I
to
should
them.
fix that, yeah. It should be he said to them, but I copied it from a place that writes these things weird in English.
Okay. If how do you say that?
Halacha means law.
Okay, if the law agrees with me, let this carob free prove it. Thereupon the carob tree, I'm sorry. Thereupon the carob tree was torn 100 cubits out of its place. Others affirm 400 cubits.
Okay, so stop there. So what does he say? He says, if I am right, you see that carob tree? That carob tree is going to magically rip itself out, either walk or fly over to another place and replant itself, basically. And that's showing you I'm right. And then what do the rabbis say? After 400 cubits, I should really divide
No
this.
proof no proof can be brought from the carob tree. Is that where you want me?
That's exactly right. They say, what business does a carob tree have intruding on our discussion? It's just a tree. So they completely ignore the magic part of it. All right. So what does he say next? I'll put it down there so it's easier to divide.
If the law agrees with me, let the stream of water prove it. Whereupon the stream of water flowed backwards. No proof can be brought from the stream of water, they rejoined.
Okay, so what happened next? What does he say? What does he do? He says, if I'm right, you see the Mississippi right there? It's going to magically start flowing the opposite way. It's just going to start flowing the opposite way, which obviously they thought was impossible back then. Obviously, we know it is not impossible because we've done it in certain cases. But he just moved his hand with the force, and the river went backwards. And so what did the rabbi say about that?
If the law agrees with me, let the walls of the schoolhouse.
Oh, no, I'm sorry. Before that, no proof can be brought from a stream of water. So they say it's just water. That's not proof. All right, next one, please.
Let the walls of the schoolhouse prove it, whereupon the walls inclined to fall. But Rabbi Joshua rebuked them, saying, when scholars are engaged in halalic, I'm sure I'm not saying that right, dispute, what have you to interfere? Hence, they did not fall in honor of Rabbi Joshua, nor did they resume the upright in honor of Rabbi Eliezer, and they are still standing thus inclined.
So he says, if I'm right, you see that schoolhouse over there? The walls are going to fall down. And so the walls start to shake, and all of a sudden another prominent rabbi, Rabbi Joshua, says, walls, you have no business in this discussion. Stop. And the walls didn't know what to do. Should they stand up or should they fall down? Because they have these two really prominent rabbis, so they decide to go inclined. And so the walls stay inclined. So that didn't work. So now Rabbi Eliezer has the greatest argument up his sleeve ever brought forward, and that's this one right now.
Let it be proved to heaven.
Oh yeah, I start with again he said to them.
Again he said to them, if the law agrees with me, let it be proved from heaven. Whereupon a heavenly voice cried out, why do you dispute with Rabbi Eliezer, seeing that in all matters the halakha agrees with him?
I stop there. So what does he do now? He says, if I am right, who's going to come down here and say I'm right? God. God is going to come down here and say I'm right. That's how right I am. And sure enough, God comes down, or the voice comes down and says, Rabbi Eliezer is right. He knows everything about the halakha. Side with him. So what do the rabbis then do, knowing that God has just sided with Rabbi Eliezer? And read that, Lou.
But Rabbi Joshua arose and exclaimed, it is not in heaven. What did he mean by this? Said Rabbi Jeremiah, that the Torah had already been given at Mount Sinai. We pay no attention to a heavenly voice because you have long since written in the Torah at Mount Sinai. After the majority must one incline.
So what do the rabbis say after God comes down and says Rabbi Eliezer is right? They say
they're not going to pay attention to him.
That's right. They're saying, sorry, God, we're not paying attention to you. You gave us the Torah. You already gave us everything. You now are no longer part of the argument. Now, obviously, if this was meant literally, that would probably not happen. But it's the idea that they're saying, no, God has no place now. So what does this mean? It means that Everything has been given. Let me check real quick.
Okay, thank you.
Did I give you 20 or 21? Excuse me, guys.
Give me 21.
Excuse me, guys, 1 second. I got to check something I may have made a mistake on. I know you're saying, wow, that can't happen. He never
I
makes
was saying
mistakes.
that. I was like,
Yeah,
how
I'm
can a
saying-
rabbi make mistakes? I'm just kidding.
I can't imagine how that happens. 20. I think
You
it's,
wouldn't be as wise as you are if you never made a mistake.
that's right. Oh, did I write out 21?
Yeah,
I did it wrong.
because show me the first word.
Math is
Yeah,
fun.
you're gonna have to rewrite it. Sorry about
That's
that.
okay. No worries.
Yeah, it goes through there. I spent all that time and I wrote the wrong one.
It's okay. I'll make sure the other one's right too.
That's okay. The other one is right,
Okay.
I think. I hope.
But that's the right portion.
Yeah,
Okay.
it should be. Hi, that's me. I spent a whole time typing out some Torah and I typed out the wrong section. So anyway, sorry about that. So all of this happens, and what are they saying? They're saying,
We don't believe you, God.
that's right. God, you've given us the Torah. It's like a parent, you gave me all my stuff. I get to make the decision myself. It's like an author. I wrote the book, and I write a book, and Lou says it means this, and Genevieve says it means this, and I say it means this, and Lou's like, no, it means this. I just read it. I know. I'm like, I wrote it. She's like, it doesn't matter. I just read it. This is what it means.
Mhm.
And so
And
they're
now
basically
4 religions, and then 4 religions got made from each
Exactly.
individual view.
Exactly. And so that's what happens here. The idea is God has given us everything we need. It's now up to us to discuss and become good human beings and make these decisions, because God's not going to do it for us. So God is not going to come down and tell us how to behave. We already know how to do it. God's not going to come down and feed the hungry. We can pray as much as we want, but it's up to us. And so this is the basis for all of halakha, this idea that it is up to us to make good decisions and be empowered. And it all comes from this very strange passage about an oven.
So is the oven kosher or not?
That is the oven is not kosher.
So
I think it is,
Eliezer
'cause
lost his argument.
That's right. He lost because at the end it says after the majority must one incline. So it's a very democratic process. The majority. Now, will the oven be clean in 100 years? Because 100 years later, the rabbinical court might get together and the majority says it is clean. But it's at this point, it is not. It's kind of like the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court has made a decision. Unless the Supreme Court overturns its own decision, it can't be overturned. And that's what they're saying. It's up to humans. Now, even though the humans may make mistakes, because the rabbi says that, God says the oven is kosher. So the rabbis are making a mistake, but it is still law because it's the majority. And we have to be able to make our mistakes and make our decisions. It's just like a child, a child between the difference between age 4, 3, and 5, my kids, and adults. Adult child makes their own decisions, may listen to my advice, but they get to make the decisions. Whereas my kids still make all the decisions. So never mind. That's a flawed theory in my house. I wake up in the morning, we decide to play with trains every morning. That is not my decision. So that is what?
Sorry. I was going to tell you a funny story, a little on topic.
Please, I
off
want to hear a
topic.
funny story.
Okay, so the feather thing reminded me of baby powder. And the reason being is because we bought a big Sam's Club version of baby powder when they were all little. Because if you can imagine, my life was a newborn, a
Yes.
1-year-old, a 2-year-old, and a 3-year-old at
I
one
can't
time.
even not imagine it. Sorry.
And I was by myself because my husband was deployed.
Yes.
And I had no family or friends nearby because we were in the Army in the middle of Texas. But
You were in the
anyway,
middle of nowhere, Texas. Yeah.
right. So I looked down the hall, right? And these toddlers have got this Sam's Club version of baby powder, and because I hear them giggling, right? And they're all giggling. So I see them and they're squeezing it. And there's a fountain of baby powder going all over the room. And it smelled so good, but I had to clean it up. And as I'm wiping, it's just going up and coming down. And then as I'm trying to vacuum, it's floating up been coming down. It was like near impossible to clean that up. It reminded me of the feathers.
Yeah,
That's a good
amen to that.
one.
Oh my gosh, yeah, and that was in the store.
No,
It
at
was
her
in your
house.
house.
At her house.
That was at
At
my
the house,
house.
because I didn't know if you
Luckily,
were in the store using their vacuum. Yeah, that is.
that would be funny.
Yeah. Oy.
I do remember, this is off topic, but at the grocery store, I do remember them all because there's 4 of them and they were all climbing on the cart and it flipped over on them. And
Oh
then, of
my
course,
goodness.
in front of everybody, the store was crowded. And then I look like a horrible mother and they're like, oh my gosh.
What kind of mother lets their kids do this?
Right?
You're a horrible. Yes, it's every except for all the people who've had kids understood, but all the people who are single or haven't had kids, those are the ones that
Or
you
have one. When they have one, it's so easy.
when they have one. Yeah, when they have one and there's 2 parents and an au pair.
Yeah, and then au pair. All
All
right, I'm
right.
done.
That was awesome. All right, so let's look at some passages from Ethics of the Father, which is another section I want to show you. That last section was from this is from a section called Nezikim, and Ethics of the Father is a very different section. So we saw what the last section was. It's more of a story discussion. And that's what most of the Talmud is. It's these discussions between rabbis. Some of it is easy to understand. Some of it is so esoteric that unless you have a PhD in philosophy, you can't understand it. Some of it deals with ethics. Some of it deals with deals with religious law. Some of it deals with other issues. And then there's this one section called Ethics of the Father, which is just quotes about how to be a good person. And it's very different than all the rest. And some of them become very famous, but they're all very important. And there's several chapters, and I copied a couple from the chapters, but you can see there's a bunch of chapters, and it's just one-liners or a couple sentences that are set by themselves. They are not connected to the rest. And so we're going to look at some of these, and these are studied a lot of times by various peoples because obviously they're understandable. And so we'll go for the first one, and if anybody wants to read, but right now we only have 2 people who can read or want to, probably.
I'll read.
All right.
Wait, where are we starting?
Chapter 1, number 1.
Okay. I am reading off my phone, so I apologize. Oh, wait, I was able to make it bigger. Look at that. Okay. No, where'd it go? You're moving it.
Oh, sorry, I forgot you're watching too. Sorry. I'm completely off here.
If I am not myself, who will be for me? And if I'm for myself alone, then what am I? And if I am not now, when?
So
I've heard that. And you're going to make me cry.
This is a very profound and famous, this is probably the most famous one from here, or one of the 2 or 3. If I'm not for myself, who will be for me? Because we think about Judaism teaching us to help others and support others, which is essential. But we all know the story about being on a plane with your kids. If the oxygen masks fall down, who do you put the mask on first?
You.
Yourself. Because if you can't help yourself, you can't help others. And so it's important for people who are ill or struggling financially or emotionally or in college or studying. It's, you think I got to be helping everybody, which is what you're supposed to do. But first, you got to make sure you're in a good place that you can help others.
Wow,
but then again, if you're only for yourself, what kind of person you are? There's a difference being I am for myself because I'm trying to get everything set up so I can help others, and just saying I'm for myself all the time, no matter what. And of course, no procrastination in Judaism. If not now, when? So the whole idea that I am for myself now because I'm trying to get myself together. But you can say that for 97 years until you die. And you can always be waiting to help somebody else. This is saying that's not an excuse. If I am not for myself, who will be for me is not an excuse to never help others. So this is an important part. It goes into a lot of other areas, whether donating money, you don't donate so much money that you make yourself impoverished or your family. So number 2, would you read that one, Lou?
Moses received the law on Sinai and delivered it to Joshua. Joshua in turn handed it down to the elders. From the elders, it descended to the prophets, beginning with Eli and Samuel. And each of them delivered it to his successors until it reached the men of the great assembly. The last named originated 3 maxims: be not hasty in judgment, bring up many disciples, and erect safeguards for the law.
Okay, so this has a lot of parts to it. What are some of the parts you see or things we learned from this?
Be not hasty in judgment.
I have a whole sermon for holidays going to do beyond that. So that is important. So after all this discussion, the passing down of the laws, be not hasty in judgment is a very important one. Anything else you understand from this?
Bring up many disciples. Bring up many disciples.
That sounds like recruiting people, but isn't the Jews aren't about recruiting people?
It's not about recruiting, it's about teaching.
Teaching
teach
children?
other people what you have learned, especially your children or others. Like the more people you teach to be good people, the more people who you help lead in the right direction. And erect safeguards around the law is kind of hard to understand.
Yeah.
But what does that mean?
Erect safeguards.
Tell us.
So if abortion is outlawed, you go to another state for it.
That could be, pretty much, it could be
Or
what
fight
you
for
look
it.
at. Safeguards for the law, that's, make sure
Adjust.
the law is not just dependent on individuals, that the law is there for everybody. So that's good.
But
It also,
safeguards, you want to get around whatever the law is? Not necessarily.
not necessarily around it. I think it's more about having loopholes could certainly be looked at what that means. It also could mean make sure laws are there so that people cannot do what they want.
They're just laws. They're fair
Just laws. Not only that, it's about making sure that they're just laws that cannot be broken easily. Like, I'm the king. I can decide not to follow any of these laws. Or I'm the king and I can change laws. That's not how it works. It should be the laws are there for everybody, and you have to find ways to make sure people are able to follow them and not. This also talks about the law and how the law we have goes all the way back to Moses. There's a belief that we've had this law since the beginning, that Judaism continues to be a religion in which we are all part of the fence. And we keep adding chains to it so that we're connected all the way back to Moses, which is kind of a powerful saying. All right, chapter 2:1. Would you read that, Genevieve?
Yeah. Rabbin, is that how you said it? You said
that one is
Rabbin?
Rabban. When you see Rabban, it just means he was the head of the rabbinical council.
Okay. Oh, I don't. Rabban Gamaliel?
Yeah, that's a hard one. Sorry about that.
Yeah. I also have to admit I had a speech impediment as a child.
Yeah, well, that would not affect you here. That's just a hard word to say. So if you don't know the name, it's not easy. And especially since it's really spelled incorrectly and that second A should probably not be there.
The son of Rabbi Jehuda, the prince often said, "Beautiful is the study of law when joined with a worldly avocation, for the efforts demanded by both stifle all inclination to sin, but study which is not associated with some worldly pursuit must eventually cease and may lead to iniquity. All who occupy themselves with communal affairs should do it in the name of heaven, for the merit of their Father sustains them, and their righteousness stands forever. And you yourselves have reward reckoned unto you as if you had wrought it." See, this is where it's hard. This sounds like freaking Shakespeare.
I know. And also the way this is translated doesn't help very much either, to be honest. So let's take it piece by piece. Beautiful is the study of the law when joined with a worldly avocation, for the efforts demanded by both stifle all inclination to sin. What does that mean? That is a tough one, but that's probably the easiest of everything here. It's still difficult. It has a lot to do with the combination of the metaphysical and the physical, the combination of philosophy and life. The idea that I'm supposed to study the law and understand the law, but that doesn't mean I should get lost in it. It's basically saying don't become a philosopher who just walks around talking about how important it is to follow the law. You're supposed to also have a job or have a life, a family. You're supposed to give back to your community. You're not supposed to go live in a cave and just live and study philosophy all the time. You need to have a worldly avocation, whether that is volunteering or family or community or a job. Be part of society if you are able.
So basically, if you just because you find spirituality or enlightenment, it doesn't mean you're better than everyone, and it helps to keep you like understanding, being empathetic. If you are in the same world as they are, then you're going to understand the same struggles.
Right, and that's important. Empathy is an important part. And I think the rabbis back then, this edict is mostly in many ways for the educated, for the rabbis themselves. They don't want them to get to study so much and kind of lose themselves in study, so they study 12 hours a day and then don't do anything else. And that's why it says, but the study which is not associated with some worldly pursuit must eventually cease and may lead to iniquity. So if you're only studying all the time, not counting getting a degree or for some purpose like that, but if your head's in the clouds and you're studying philosophy and all you do is study the books and the books and the books and you don't do other stuff, that is not enough. That is actually against the rules.
So what about all these like Catholic priests and stuff that don't, I mean, obviously they're not Jewish. It just surprises me because they still, being raised, they just say that everything stems from Judaism. Judaism is the precursor. And some of this just blows my mind because, like how bishops and stuff aren't supposed to get married and that's all they're supposed to do.
Yeah, but bishops are supposed to still work with people and stuff. So it's the idea that you got to be part of society, not be outside of society. So,
Gotcha.
and if you're, it's also about,
monks.
Yeah, monks would be maybe a good example. Monks are not part of Judaism. We don't have that.
Yeah, I know.
So if you go out to the wilderness and cut you off from society and pray and study, that would probably be against the view of what you're supposed to do. Although if you're in a community and you're serving the community, that may be different. So, but it's basically you're supposed to do a combination of study, philosophy, learning to be a good person, but also putting it into everyday practice and committing yourself to the community as well.
Yeah, that makes sense too, because I was listening, it was more of a business thing, but it was telling people that you can learn about business forever, but you're not really going to learn until you put it into practice.
That's an excellent point. That's a really good analogy. And that's exactly what, but also let's say you're a teacher of business, you're still teaching and working with people and helping them. So that counts. That's the same thing as doing business. So, but you're right. I think exactly what you said. You got to put things into, some sort of legitimate worldly avocation.
So this is probably also a weird question, but
Great.
When the Talmud was written, is there any chance, obviously we don't know if Jesus is real, but is there any chance it was written before Jesus?
Well,
time?
The ultra-Orthodox believe the entire Talmud was given at Mount Sinai thousands of years before.
Okay.
So, but most of it was probably written 200 to 500. However, the first part of the Talmud, which is called the Mishnah, was written somewhere from about 100 probably BCE to 200 CE. So some of that would have been written possibly before Jesus and during his life.
Okay. It's silly, but I was just curious if he was alive and around, if somehow these teachings would have been an impression on his teachings.
Yes, some of them definitely. Like Rabbi Hillel would have been around during the time of Jesus, which is the next
Okay.
one. Is this actually something he said, or was it attributed to him? That's always a debate.
Okay.
But I think it's Lou's turn for
Number
chapter
2.
2. Yeah, Hillel.
Hillel was in the habit of saying, do not isolate yourself from the community and its interests. Do not rely upon your spiritual strength until the day of thy death. Pass not judgment upon your neighbor until you have put yourself in his place. Say not a thing which must not be heard, because eventually it will be heard. He knew about the internet before.
Yeah, no kidding.
Say never, sometime or other, when I enjoy leisure, I will attend my spiritual advancement. Perhaps you wilt then never have the leisure.
All right, perfect. So this, again, some of these we've already talked about, but some we have not. The first one is very important, which is,
Do not isolate yourself. That take from the other page.
it is common. It is, yes.
Interest. Go up with number 1, please. If I am not for myself.
Perfect. And this is talking about you're supposed to be part of a community. It's very hard to be a Jew if you're isolated. I mean, obviously it's done sometimes, but generally speaking, you try and be part of a community so you don't have to rely on your spiritual strength by yourself until the day you die. You should have others to support you as well. The next one is a very important one. Pass not judgment upon your neighbor as you put in yourself your place. It sounds like, oh, we've been saying that for years. Well, it may have come from this originally.
Mhm.
Don't gossip. If it's not something you want to be heard, then don't say it.
Well, what is that saying about walking 100 miles in the other person's shoes, or whatever that saying is?
That's exactly what this is. 100. And then also procrastination. Don't do it. You can always say, I'm going to do it. I'm going to do it. I'm going to have time to do this or that. Eventually I'm going to get it done. And then eventually you don't do it. So it can count to leisure, spiritual advancement, other things. But you always think of somebody saying, well, I don't have time to get married, or I don't have time to go on vacation, and then you never do. Or I don't have time to spend with my kids. I work too hard. Well, maybe you do and maybe you don't. But I think that's one that we see a lot, is we procrastinate. Except for Genevieve and Lou and Arnold, who actually came in on time. Okay.
Yeah, they leave quicker than you expect.
Right.
Mhm.
As you know, we still got a couple home and a couple out. All right, we'll do a couple more, if that's okay, if you guys want.
Yeah, it's interesting.
Okay, Genevieve, would you do 2, 3? I think it was your turn.
Okay. You said 3? Okay. He also said the boor can never fear sin. The ignorant can never be truly pious. Whoso is ashamed to ask will never learn, and no irritable man can be a teacher. He whose mind is given to worldly gain will not acquire wisdom. Where a man is needed, endeavor so that you be the man.
Okay,
Wow,
so
this one's hitting home too.
yeah, these are very obvious to this day, because a lot of them are the basis of what we have to this day. So there's like 4 nuggets in this one. So the first one is the boar can.
Oh, yeah.
No,
Sorry,
go ahead, Genevieve. No, please.
Okay, yeah, like basically, if you can't fear sin if you're ignorant
Right.
to being a good person, I guess.
That's right. So, there's excuses that can be used. I did not know I was not supposed to touch that. I'm 3 years old. That's certainly a legitimate excuse. I don't know how to be a good person. At 30 means you spent a lot of time not doing it. Ignorance is not piety. Ignorance is not bliss in some cases it is, but not when it comes to being a good person.
Are you allowed to claim ignorance if at an older age, if you went through a lot of trauma?
Oh yeah, you can
Not for
claim ignorance.
me specifically. I was just thinking of other people.
There's always legitimate reasons that go beyond what we're saying here for health, for age, for situations. So if you're very ill or have in some sort of incapacity, if you're very young, I mean, if you're in a difficult position, but this is an overall life thing. So, and the next one is really important also, that if you're afraid to ask questions, you're going to have trouble learning. So,
My dad used to say that all the time. The
Yes.
only dumb question was the one not asked, but that
That's
got
right.
me in a lot of trouble because I was full of questions.
well, you're in the right religion because our religion
love it.
our religion is all about the questions.
I
And
think that
that's
was the
why-
first thing I fell in love with.
Yeah, and that's why no irritable man or woman can be a teacher, or I should say good teacher, because you can't take the questions. And if you're going to be a teacher, you got to be able to answer questions and also learn from your students
Yeah, and be patient.
and be patient. So these are things that are essential.
But
And
that's me. I'm always afraid of looking stupid.
not me. That's a gift of mine.
Me too. It's a gift of mine to
But
look
yes,
stupid
we're
all
all
the time.
afraid of asking questions at different times in our life, depending on what's going on. If somebody says, "Have you seen this movie?" or "You heard of this book?" and everybody's like, "Oh, yeah, it's amazing," how often do I say nothing because I don't want people to know I didn't read that book because maybe it's a book I should have read.
When
So-
I first walked into the synagogue, I was afraid to ask questions because one, I didn't want to offend anyone, and two, because I didn't, I didn't want to look dumb that I didn't know anything
Right.
and I didn't belong there.
Yeah, and plus the rabbi is really intimidating, and that's also
Really
has an
is.
effect. Yeah. So, but yeah, I think these pieces and Perikei Avot are mostly very obvious.
Yeah.
When a human being is needed, endeavor that you will be that human being. That is really important, and it's a problem for all of us. Thank goodness I married my wife because, we need to fix the sink. Endeavor to be that man. I don't have to because she knows how to do it and I don't. Endeavor to be the man who is a person who can do what is needed. And so that is important. My son needed diapers changed this morning. My wife, sometimes I do the breakfast and lunch, and she was doing it, so I changed the diaper. I know a lot of guys would say, "Honey, can you change the diaper?" So, but it's kind of endeavor to be the person who is. It's not always going to work. If Lou says, "Robert, can you come over and fix my computer?" I cannot endeavor to be that person because it would take me like 5 years of college and I still wouldn't be able to do it. But if it's something within reason, yes.
Call the plumber.
Call the plumber. Exactly. Give me the name of a plumber.
Right.
Okay, we'll do one or two more and we'll invite Lou to read about this is one of the most important rabbis and then talking apparently two of the most important rabbis. So that the first one is Rabban Yochanan ben Zakkai.
Thank you.
By the way, all three of these rabbis have streets in Israel. That's how important they are.
Okay. Received it from Hillel and Shammai. Is that right?
Mhm.
He often said, if you have learned much, do not boast, for it is for that you were created.
Excellent. That's a really important one too.
So don't be a braggart.
Right. If you're really good at, tennis, God created you to be good at tennis. Don't brag about it. That's what you were created for. You thank God, but you're not supposed to be overbearing about it. If you're really a brilliant, mathematician or a great teacher or a very wealthy person, that's what you may have been meant to be, and it's not something to brag about. All right. Next one, it's the same first guy because they're continuing. I'll invite Genevieve.
5, right?
Yep, please.
Go out and find what is the best thing to cultivate. Rabbi Eltzer said, a generous eye. Rabbi Joshua said, a loyal friend. And Rabbi Jose said, a good neighbor. And Rabbi Simon thought, prudence and foresight. Rabbi Eliezer said, a good heart. Thereupon the master said, I consider Rabbi Eliezer art. I forgot what the B stands for.
Ben,
Ben?
our bar.
Ben? Nope. Okay. Arc judgments the best for in his all of yours are included.
All right. Now, you may have heard of a bar mitzvah.
Yeah.
So that B can mean bar, so son of.
Oh.
Because a Jewish name is your name, son of your parents' name.
Oh, like the O'Reillys. The O in Irish is son of.
Really? I did not know that.
Didn't know that
Uh-huh.
either.
Yeah, so if you're like an O'Malley, or you're like
Son of
son
Mally?
of that clan, or son of that man, you know what I
Oh,
mean?
wow. So that's the exact same thing it is.
Yeah, cool.
Yeah, the only reason we have last names is because kings and countries 300 or 400 years ago said there's a lot we need to conscript these people for the military. We need to make sure they're paying taxes. We need to keep records of them. So they made us get last names. So this one is really important because it's saying, what is the best thing to cultivate? And you have these rabbis who say all these great things. And then Rabbi Elazar at the end says, the best thing to get is a good heart. And so then the teacher said, which is Yochanan ben Zakkai, he's right, because if you have a good heart, you get the other stuff as well.
Oh, that's beautiful.
That's nice. So Yochanan ben Zakkai is a very interesting character because of his story. So the story of Yochanan ben Zakkai, and there is some truth to it, is in the year 67, there's a revolution against the Romans in Israel. Not all the Jews want to be part of this revolution, but the Jews are inside the old city, and the old city is being attacked by the Romans. But the Jews who don't want to rebel are stuck in the old city because the zealots who want to rebel are not letting the Jews out. And so Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai, he was just rabbi at the time, Rabban means he's fakes his own death because the burial plot was outside the old city in the valley right below. So his students are taking him out to be buried, and he gets out of the coffin and he runs off. And it's said that he went to Vespasian, who was the Roman general who was attacking the city. And he went to Vespasian and he said, I would like to set up an academy for study in this place called Yavne, where that's where eventually it becomes. And Vespasian says, you must be joking. You know, you're asking me to give you I'm attacking your city. And he says, I tell you what, if you agree to this, I guarantee that you will soon become the emperor of Rome. And so he says, okay, you've got it. And all of a sudden somebody comes in, a messenger says, emperor's dead. Vespasian, you need to go back to Rome so you can be crowned emperor. So is that story true? What is true is that he did start an academy at Yavne after the destruction of the temple. And that's really probably where the Bible was edited and canonized. So he is kind of the guy who starts what we would call rabbinic Judaism in many respects. So I actually lived on his street in Israel one time. So, all right. So that's a little bit of this. Genevieve, you're on mute if you had a question.
I was asking, how did you spell that rabbi guy's name again with that said about the good heart? I just want to look him up.
There's a lot. It's Rabban, R-A-B-B-A-N.
B-B-A-N, okay.
Now this part is maybe spelled differently in English, but Y-O-C-H-A-N-A-N.
Y-O-C-H-N-A-N.
Something like that. Ben. Next word is Ben.
Uh-huh.
Zakkai. Z-A-K-K-A-I. Something like that.
Okay.
And it should be a huge Wikipedia page because he's a major
And
player.
that's the guy that his answer was the good heart?
Yep.
Okay.
All right. Thanks for studying with me, guys. That was fun.
It was great. That was really
Nice to
interesting.
text.
Thank you.
So does anybody have a subject matter for next week? If not, I will find one.
I mean, again, I'm still interested in hearing about Kabbalah. I know other people may
Oh,
have
that's
already
right.
heard all
Well,
about
I think what I'm going to do for that's a really hard one to do in one session. So I think
Okay.
I may start that like in August
it. Okay,
and do
and then
like several sections of it, if that's
I don't know
okay.
if anybody, I don't even know if it's a whole class or anybody else is interested, but I'm
Well,
kind of
we-
intrigued by gematria.
Okay, well, probably 10 years ago or 9 years ago, we spent the whole year studying the Kabbalah, the whole year. Like we had
Oh my
like
gosh,
12
where was I
sessions.
9 years ago?
It was like 12 sessions. We did it for 12 months in a row, but we can do it again. Obviously, it won't take us, so we'll start that probably in August or something and do like a bunch of weeks in a row for it. So, because that's really great. And I can also make sure people know the book we use, which is a good one.
Gematria kind of intrigues me a little bit.
Yeah, and that's part of it. That's part of it. So,
Oh, it is? Gematria is part of Kabbalah?
Mhm.
I don't know why I thought they were separate.
they're not. I mean, gematria is basically it's always about finding new ways to be enlightened, new ways to learn, and that is a major part of it. Not the only part,
Okay.
a part of it.
Okay. I guess, yeah, numbers and all that just fascinate me.
Well, it's about, because every Hebrew letter has a number, is represented by a number. So Aleph is
Right.
1, Bet is 2, and that's how they number.
Mhm.
Only in the modern world, when Israel became a country, a Western country, did they start using the other. So that makes it easier to use numbers because obviously that means every word has a numerical representation.
Mhm.
All right, cool. All right, excellent. So thanks for coming. For those of you missed it, we just talked about text. We also yesterday had our first Israel trip meeting. We had a lot of people interested. We went over all these thoughts on people on what they wanted to change, and I just went over it this morning, and every single one seemed very feasible, which was kind of interesting. So almost 100% was agreeable to them. So it was great. All right, so excellent. And I'll send out that note probably soon. I don't know if I get to it today, but maybe next week about all the changes. So all our best. We will be meeting next week. We don't have the subject matter set yet. Hopefully I'll remember to send out the note beforehand. But if you have any questions, let me know. If you have any subject matters you want, please email me. Happy to teach about anything except for how to enjoy Indian food. All right, you guys stay safe, and I will see you later. Anything else you need, let me know.
Thank you.
Bye, everybody.
Bye-bye.